On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Raptors, there isn't just one thing that'll make or break the Jakob Poeltl experiment in Toronto, but there is one thing that could make or break it more than anything else. We'll talk about that and dig into some listener questions on today's episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks so much for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1342 of Locked On Raptors for Tuesday, February the 14th. Happy Valentine's Day to those observing. I'm, of course, your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 9 seasons on various platforms. You can find all of my work over on Twitter, at Woodley Sean. You can find the show at Locked On Raptors. You can follow, subscribe to, rate, and review the podcast for free on your favorite podcast apps. And of course, we are on YouTube. You can go hit the big red subscribe button to support the show on the YouTube side of things. I believe we're 1 subscriber away as we speak from 2,900 on the YouTube channel. Let's get 101 more and get to that 3K, baby. We love the round numbers here because it helps my brain. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. All right, on today's show, got some listener questions we're going to get into in terms of number semiotics with Jakob Poeltl rocking the number 19. We're going to talk about Jakob Poeltl as well through the lens of, could the Raptors have just signed and traded for him if they really wanted to in the offseason? Those questions and so many more coming up on today's show. But I did want to start off by digging into something that I think is very important when it comes to the fact-finding mission we're on between now and the end of the season and sort of determining what works, what doesn't work, who is going to be around long-term with this team, and how the Jakob Poeltl experiment is all kind of tied in with it. And I think, for me, we're going to dig into a whole bunch of these little things, these little important questions that the Raptors have asked of themselves and are trying to gather information on in a pretty compressed amount of time here as we go along throughout the coming weeks and months here on the show. But for me, I think the one thing that's very clear to me is that this whole thing the Raptors are doing, this whole trade for Jakob Poeltl, not moving anybody else off at the deadline, trying to gather information for the next couple months here before making final declarative decisions on what the team is going to look like, who's going to be part of the solution, who's going to be part of the Scottie Barnes era going forward. I think a big question that hinges on all of this, and I think the Raptors are betting on, is the shooting of Pascal Siakam and Scottie Barnes. And I do feel like the answer to that question of, can those two dudes shoot enough, is probably the most important thing when it comes to, is this going to work? Is the Jakob Poeltl, Pascal Siakam, Scottie Barnes front court something you can roll with going forward, or will you have to pivot? And does that, A, make the Jakob Poeltl trade look like a bad investment in retrospect? Does it mean that Pascal Siakam maybe gets kind of nudged out of the plans just because of space and shooting and the need to properly complement this roster with enough three-point shooting to make it all work together? And those two guys, Pascal and Scottie, there's a lot riding on those two becoming at least average three-point shooters, average-ish, guys who aren't great necessarily, but are guys who you got to think about twice when leaving wide open and can burn teams when left wide open. That's a huge question because neither of those guys have really shown all that much capacity for being great three-point shooters. Obviously, Pascal's had his moments. He'll have his heaters, of course, when the jumper is on, when the touch is there. He can pour in 4 of 7, 5 of 7, whatever. He's very good when he's in the zone. It's more of a sort of night to night. You're not totally sure what you're going to get with his three-point stroke type of situation. Scottie Barnes, it's just, it's been left to be desired, I think, really since the first couple months of his rookie season, where it looked like, oh, God, Scottie Barnes hitting threes? This is a problem for everybody, not including, the Raptors is not a problem for because he's hitting threes for them. But everybody else, oh, my God, if Scottie Barnes is burying threes, that's a real problem. And the reason I think the three-point shooting is even more of a big question than, say, the defense, for example, is I'm pretty sure the defense is going to be all right. Obviously very short sample here, just 2 games, 81 possessions, 88 possessions or something like that per cleaning the glass with Jakob Poeltl on the floor. But I think you're already seeing the change that he's going to bring to the Raptors defense, and I do think he's going to help make this more of that sort of top 10-ish defense that we thought they were going to be coming into the season, because he's a very good rim protector. Even if they're not going to use him in like the ideal fashion in more of a drop defense setting and have him kind of be close to the rim, if they're going to ask him to come out of the perimeter, that's not ideal, of course, come up high in those pick and roll coverages. You don't want that all the time necessarily. It's not his bag. But even if they don't use him 100% as you'd like to see him used, he's good enough just by being a 7-foot rim protection specialist to solve a lot of the problems the Raptors have on defense. You know, the perimeter defense questions are another thing entirely, but he can help fix those problems, clean up those messes in a way no one on the team has really been able to do over the last couple of seasons. And the defense so far, the early returns are very good. With Yak on the floor over the last 2 games, 102.3 defensive rating. They're a plus 12.5 net rating overall with Yak on the floor. He matters. Obviously, 2 bad teams. The Jazz, of course, they lose to the bad team in the Jazz, so, you know, call them bad if you at your peril, I suppose. Call the Raptors respectable at your peril, I suppose. And then barely beating the Pistons, like, not exactly 2 games that you're going to go and build a sample out of or anything like that. All of these samples are caveated with the fact that they are minuscule and probably irrelevant, but the early returns on the defense, I think, line up with what you'd expect with the arrival of Jakob Poeltl. It's the shooting and the way the offense operates, even more so than just the shooting itself, that's going to be the determining factor of, can you play with a front court of Pascal Siakam, Scottie Barnes, and Jakob Poeltl when things matter down the stretch of games? Over the course of 82 games, can you build your cap sheet out of those guys occupying significant portions of it? Obviously, Scottie less so right now, but in the future, he's going to get paid, obviously. Can you work those 3 guys in and have enough shooting, enough offensive punch around them to be a good offense and to outscore what you're doing on the defensive end? And look, in fairness, they won't have to, in theory, outscore their defensive problems the way they've had to over the last couple of months nearly as much with Jakob Poeltl in tow. They've been a miserable defense, you know, before Yak arrived over the previous month and a half, and their offense has been good enough to get them by and win some games that maybe their defense suggests that they shouldn't have. Now I think the question comes, can the offense hold up? You know, when you're up against real defenses that are actually keyed in for you, can you get enough going? You know, I think 2 things are going to be really important here. Scottie and Pascal, obviously the 3-point shooting. And can they become a team that lives at the rim? I think it's there for them to grab if they want to. I think the way they've played offense this season, where they've been very ISO heavy, mismatch heavy, kind of selfish, I think that's worked against them getting to the rim a lot. You think back to the start of the season when Nick Nurse talked about how getting to the rim, getting free throws, obviously the 3-point ball too, were going to be massive things they were focusing on. Those low-hanging fruit things on offense. Everybody knows getting to the rim is the most valuable shot in basketball. And to the Raptors' credit, they've been better at it this year than they have been in the past. Last year, they were 26th per cleaning the glass in both frequency and accuracy at the rim. This year, they're 19th in accuracy, 17th in frequency, middle of the pack. You want to be better than that, but that's progress. They got to be even better than that, I think, especially if Scottie Barnes and Pascal are going to be the ho-hum shooters they are so far. You know, Pascal, I think I'm fine with his shooting. Like, if his shooting stays the same, I think they can probably get by. He's a 34-ish% shooter over the last couple of seasons. That seems to have leveled off after his dip in the 2019-20 season, or was it 2021? He was like 36%, I want to say, in well, let me pull this up. I'm screwing up my years. Either way, the last couple of seasons, he's at like 34% from 3, and that to me feels like where he's about to settle in. His career numbers are about 33%. You know, we had back, it was 2021, 1920, where he was at 36%, 37% in his most improved player season. So anywhere between 34 and 37, if Pascal settles in there, I think that's good enough. He's got the mid-range game. He obviously can dictate what's going on the floor better than most ball handlers can. He can overcome, I think, being an okay 3-point shooter. Scottie Barnes is going to have to be pretty good, I think, in particular in catch and shoot situations where it's coming to him as part of the flow of the offense, and it might require him to just put a shot up, whether it's late in the clock, whether it's just a wide open look that they've created that's come to Scottie. The team's not worried about it. He's got to burn teams for that. And to his credit, he's improved slightly so far this season when it comes to his 3-point shooting. You know, he's kind of around the same 31-ish% year over year, but his catch and shoot numbers have improved a smidge from 29% last season up to 32.5% this season, which is not like a massive leap or anything like that, but it's enough of a step in the right direction, I think, where you can feel all right. He's currently shooting 45% from the left corner. It's just 22 attempts. He's 10 of 22. That's the only place on the floor from three-point range where he's shooting above league average. He's kind of miserable, like 24% from the right corner. He's like 31% all around above the break. I think if he can maintain that 31, 32 from above the break and just really key in on being a good corner three-point shooter, that will give them enough juice when you combine it with the passing that Yak and Pascal and Scottie all provide. That is a huge advantage. You can make a good offense out of that playmaking and passing and ball handling. And then you have to obviously sprinkle in shooters around them. It's going to be a challenge tonight for the Raptors to do that. It seems as though Gary Trent Jr. is going to be out again, no OG, and then no Precious Achiuwa, who's not shooting very well, but is someone who can take threes and is willing to do it. I'm fascinated to see who's going to be the fifth starter tonight, alongside Yak and Scottie, Pascal, and Fred. I wonder if they roll like an old Dwayne Casey special where you pull someone from deep bench and kind of bypass the rotation just to keep your bench rotation intact. I wonder if Joe Wieskamp gets a look maybe now that he's signed to a real deal. Obviously a very good three-point shooter, has bombed away in the couple instances he's gotten a chance with the Raptors. I do wonder maybe that's the way they go. Do they go Juancho? Do they just go Chris Boucher, who's been better of late from three than he was all of last season, essentially, kind of around that 33% mark now, which is positive improvement for sure, where you want to see him settle in, I think, maybe slightly above that, but maybe Boucher comes in. Either way, what happens tonight is less important than what happens between now and the end of the season. And I think the key number to watch, really, to sort of determine the health, the long-term viability of this shooting light front court is the offensive rating when Barnes, Siakam, and Poeltl share the floor. You're going to be able to dot shooters around those guys basically at all times, at least passable shooters. You have Fred, obviously, OG, Trent, Boucher, like go on down the line. You have guys you can sprinkle in to be reasonable shooters along those guys, but can those three still maintain a good offense when they're on the floor? So far, again, so good. Two really bad defenses in the Jazz and the Detroit Pistons, but 134 offensive rating, 114 points per play in the half court for that lineup as well. That trio so far in 2 games together. Again, very early returns. Sample means just about nothing, but if that is what you're holding up, 114 points per play would be the best half court offense in the league by many, many miles. That's not going to hold up, obviously, but if they can just be pretty good on offense, I think the defense has a chance to be excellent with that front court trio, especially as Scottie Barnes matures as a defender, comes into, I think, the sort of roaming help role that I think he's really going to thrive in long term. If that can sort of hold up and the defense can be as good as you think, with Jakob Poeltl back there cleaning up the messes, and the offense can be just good enough, have just enough shooting to scrape by, then I think that trio's viable long term. If it's not, if these two guys, completely crater, there's no development in the offseason in their three-point game, I don't think they're going to make a grand decision on the three-point shooting viability of Scottie Barnes by June or anything like that, because he's a young player, guys improve, but you have to see that steady improvement and feel like there's an upside there to tap into three-point-wise. And Scottie Barnes is shooting, especially when paired with Siakam and Poeltl, is going to be one of the most important swing skills on this team going forward. Pretty convinced of that. We're going to continue on here and leave off this sort of, digging into a thing that could potentially undo the Raptors from the inside. We'll get to your listener questions coming up in just a second. We got some great ones that came in, some fun, lighthearted ones, some heavier ones as well about the direction of the team and all that. We'll get to that in one sec, but first got to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel, the place to go if you're looking to get into sports wagering. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers to three-pointers drained. You got the in-game parlay, same-game parlay. So, for example, tonight, Raptors are playing the Magic. You want to go and bet on, Pascal Siakam hitting the over for points, Fred VanVleet hitting the over for threes made, and Scottie Barnes hitting the over for assists. You can go do that and win some scratch. Go ahead. And plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with that same game parlay. So go have some fun. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and of Locked On. All right, we continue on here with your first listen of the day. Digging into your listener questions now. Lots of good questions came in. We will examine them all. This one here comes from Ben Chapman at ChapmanBA, asking, why do we think the team that always seems to fall back on, quote, we can get something for them in a sign and trade, didn't think waiting for a sign and trade was a viable option for Poeltl? Is the premium they paid for his bird rights worth it for 25 games of fact-finding? This is a really good question, and it does kind of turn the Raptors' own philosophies back on them. I think when it comes to Poeltl, one of the things here I wonder is it a matter of keeping him away from whichever other team might have landed him? For example, the Boston Celtics. The Celtics land Poeltl. Do they look to keep him as a team that's not got a lot in terms of cap space and wiggle room? They're probably going to lose Grant Williams in the offseason. Is this maybe a way where they get Poeltl in the door and try to keep him? Do you prevent another team from getting Jakob Poeltl? That's kind of part one of this. I also think, if you have a guy in mind, if you want to target him, if you think you have a real chance of getting him and keeping him long term, which it seems like they do with Poeltl, I don't mind getting him in the door for that fact-finding, because the fact-finding, as much as there's air quotes around it in Ben's question, it is a real thing. We've seen so far this season a massive thing the Raptors lack is big man play, rim protection, traditional center things, and I think considering the weirdness of this season, I know it's been disappointing and plenty of folks have determined this team bad and terrible and not worth keeping around, and that's fine. Whatever, we can disagree, that's cool. But I do think if the whole season suggests, everything that happens has suggested, man, this would be so much better with just a regular center in there, and you can go get that center, I'm fine with that. Look, I don't love the protections on the pick for next season. 1 through 6 feels a little bit light for me. That said, as someone who still thinks there's a good team in here somewhere and who thinks you can turn this into a good team next season as well, in an Eastern Conference that's going to be diminished with the Nets probably dropping off from sort of upper crust contention. Who the hell knows what's going to happen with the Sixers if that all goes to hell, like Sixers playoff runs typically tend to go to hell. Maybe there's some big, shakeups there coming too. I'm not terribly worried about the ascent of the Hawks or the Wizards or even the Knicks or anything like that. The Raptors could put themselves right back into the top 6 conversation pretty comfortably within a year, I think, when you factor in the improvement of a Scottie Barnes, of a Precious Achiuwa. And so I think it's worth getting a look at the guys you have on the roster right now playing alongside a real center. It's been the thing all year long. They should have done it sooner is the thing. They should have, maybe you pony up and you only protect it 1 through 4 or something like that to get it done earlier in the year and save the season, as it were. Maybe I'm putting too much on Jakob Poeltl's capacity to save the Raptors season, but I do think we've seen early on here that it's valuable to see what this team can do with a real big man. Was Yak ever my first choice? Not necessarily. I think they probably could have gone at the directions that fit the roster and the build a little bit more often to make it so questions about the shooting that is around him in the front court with Scottie and Pascal aren't even things you got to consider. If you could find a shooting big man, you can't always find a shooting big man. It's hard to do. I don't mind going to get your guy, even if I disagree with the level of protection on the picks. I ultimately don't think it's going to come back in and burn them because, I was hoping lottery protected, right? That was my dream protection on those picks. I feel like they stand a pretty good chance of avoiding the lottery when you consider they're a positive point differential team this season, despite all that's gone on, despite how poorly they've played and how nonsensical it's all looked. You'd have to think, at least I have to think, that they're going to be back in that top 6 conversation as of next season. Obviously pending whatever happens this offseason. And there's going to be a lot of stuff that happens this offseason. This offseason could blow up in their faces and go poorly enough that they go into next year with a team that's not ready to go and compete for a playoff spot. I'm going to err on the side of I think they're going to do that. And I think just a little bit more of a look at what this team can do with Yak helps you inform what your offseason decisions are going to be, as opposed to making all these decisions in the offseason and then having to go also get a center to see how it all works. I feel like these 26 games of Yak in the lineup are going to be very valuable, and I think it's worth the price they paid, even if it's a little bit of an excessive price. Next question here. This one comes in also from Jake Talks Sports, asking, how do you feel about the Jakob package in relation to the impact he should have on the team? Kind of, again, along the lines of the Jakob Poeltl package. Look, I know the protections are a thing to hang up on, but ultimately, what the Raptors have traded here in giving up their first-round pick next season is like two second rounders, blah. Kem Birch, they got off the money. That's actually a positive thing, getting off Kem Birch's money. That is good for the books. That's good for the long-term planning of the team here, because you don't have that money on the books next year. Again, they shouldn't have signed it to begin with, but at least you have that money off the books now. I think that's worth paying some sort of premium for. I ultimately think first round picks, that's something the Raptors can go and replenish if they trade OG Anunoby at the draft or whatever it might be. That's something that, they're going to have a first round pick thrown into the mix this year as well, which should be a pretty decent pick, even if it's not a lottery pick, maybe it's 16th or whatever. That's still a decent pick to throw into your mix and put into your program around what you already have. I think ultimately the package is done now. I don't think you should tie your feeling of a guy or the way you watch a guy to what you gave up to get him. I think that's a good way to kind of be resentful and whatnot. He didn't choose to be traded for a first round pick, and ultimately I think the impact he's going to have is going to be significant enough that you won't feel too badly about it. And if he's good enough, if he's very good, and the Raptors do solve a lot of their problems with Jakob Poeltl in tow, then that first round pick conversation becomes way less concerning, because you're giving up, more likely than not, a non-lottery pick next year, and you can make your peace with that and move on. It's if the pick starts to get into that weird zone where it keeps on conveying and conveying because they end up in the top 6 next year or something like that, that's where I think you get in some real trouble, because you're tying up picks for trades and stuff like that. I'm not too concerned. We're going to come back on the other side, get to a couple more mailbag questions to round it all out before we send you off into your Tuesday evening to watch Raptors Magic, baby. Raptors Magic without Terrence Ross, by the way, which makes me very sad, as much as I'm thrilled Terrence Ross has gone to the Phoenix Suns to go try to win a chip. Not seeing Terry Ross 4 times a year across the floor from the team I like is going to make me sad. We'll get to that in just one sec, but first, got to tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with, and that's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with the people who have the skills, values, and experience to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs help you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with their targeting tools. They go beyond resume data to help you find that needle in the haystack by using insights from your job post company and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. It's like bringing all of the needles out of the haystack right to the top so you can sort through the ones you want to interview. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your quality, based on job qualifications, all on one platform. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockednba. That's linkedin.com/lockednba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's round out the show here with a couple more mailbag questions coming in. This first one here comes from Santi Espinoza asking, we're currently 9th. With the addition of Jakob Poeltl, how much higher is the probability of making that top 6 spot by the end of the season? So if you take a look at the standings right now, you have the Raptors sitting at 27-31 in that 9th spot after last night's action, with the Bulls having lost 4 in a row. They're no good. The Wizards having lost last night as well. They're also no good. I think the Raptors, as much as you might not like it, are going to be in the play-in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, you want to try to get up to that 7-8 game, so you have 2 shots at it, as opposed to being win or go home in 2 straight games, being in that 9 or 10 spot. You're obviously starting behind the 8 ball there. Right now, they sit 5 games back of the Miami Heat. I think that's going to be a difficult mountain to climb to catch number 6 in the East. Even if the Brooklyn Nets fall down, they're still well ahead of the Raptors, 5.5 games up, 6.5 games up right now. And I think the Nets actually kind of have a reasonable roster. Will it translate to a lot of wins? I'm not sure. I think it'll translate to enough wins, however, that they're not going to slide too far in the standings. And as much as I don't think they're a playoff quality team now, I think they'll just be there by virtue of having banked 33 wins to this point. That's a lot of ground for the Raptors to make up and not a whole lot of time. They're going to need the Nets to really stink, which I don't think they do. when it comes to who I think they can jump, like I think the Hawks are eminently jumpable. I think the Hawks are not very good. They don't play defense. They don't really seem to have a whole lot of an identity around Trae Young. They've invited Sadiq Bey, whose whole thing in Detroit was, I'm going to commandeer the offense and make everybody not like me while doing it inefficiently. And they've added him to the mix now too, which feels like a decidedly very pro-Atlanta Hawks type move in that he fits exactly the type of players they tend to employ. Will that translate to them being better? I'm pretty skeptical of that. I think the Hawks are passable for sure. The Knicks are pretty solid. They have a 3-game edge in the loss column on the Raptors right now. 4 games, that is, sorry. Like, that's going to be a tough hill to climb as well. I don't think they're some incredible team or anything like that. I think the Knicks are fine, but Jalen Brunson's playing out of his mind. If that continues, they're going to be tough to track down. So I ultimately think getting top 6, pretty unlikely. Getting even to 7th is going to be a bit of a climb, but can they go from 9th to 8th? Absolutely they can. I think the Hawks stink. And so as much as the Raptors also might stink in addition to that, I think the Raptors have the juice and the easy schedule coming up as well to potentially climb a little bit in the standings up into that 8th spot and get themselves 2 shots at the play-in. And, we can talk about what comes after that after. A 1-8 with the Celtics, not going to be the most fun in the world, but hey, playoff experience is good. Play-in is good. If you get 2 play-in games, that's fun times. The single elimination ball is good. Anyway, next question here. This one comes in from Eric Morris at Epic Moppus, classic question asker on the show, and the most famous Tennessee Toronto Raptors fan that I know, at least. If you feel like you have a claim to being the most famous Tennessee Raptors fan, or the most notable, whatever it is, let me know. Eric, though, asks, how does number 19 on Jakob Poeltl strike you? I think it fits him, but I think it'll take a bit longer before I start thinking him as a 19. This is an excellent question. This is the type of stuff I think about far too much. I love jersey number semiotics. Of course, with the Raptors, he was number 42, which I always loved next to number 43, Pascal Siakam. I just, having 2 best buds be numbers back to back, I think that is very touching and cool. Yak said that number 19 is a personal choice for him. He wore 25 with the Spurs. He says 19 was a personal choice. He's not going to reveal why it is. It sounds like Sherman Hamilton on the broadcast noted that he knows why it is. He's just not going to share it. I don't have an inkling as to what it might be. I do think 19 is a weird number for a center, and I think this is because of my hockey brain. Number 19 I've always associated as like a winger number, as like a forward number, and as much as I find, obviously, you have a similar sort of setup in theory with guards in basketball, kind of in theory representing your defensemen, and then you're centered and 2, wing players representing your forwards in hockey. I kind of view it in the inverse, where I kind of view like your center and your power forward as your defensemen, and therefore your wing players and your point guards are more your forwards. This might make no sense in anybody's brain, but this is why I'm having trouble with number 19 for Jakob Poeltl. The center feels like the stay-at-home defenseman of a hockey team, and that feels like a single-digit number, like a number 2 or a number 6 or something like that is more warranted for that type of player. 19 feels like a forward number. It's like Joe Sakic. I think, who are the number 19s? There's lots of 19s, lots of wingers and stuff like that wear number 19. It's like the number you get in hockey. Like the defensemen usually get the lower numbers when you're playing growing up. The forwards get the higher numbers, like 19. And so for me, defensive center number 19 doesn't quite line up to me. There's a theory that I have is that 19 is actually like a chip on the shoulder type number for Jakob Poeltl. It's the year in which he was not on the Raptors when they won the championship. Maybe he's using that as some sort of fuel. It's like, you guys traded me away. All right, I'll wear this number as a symbol of my chip being on my shoulder forever, or lack of chip, I suppose. Probably doing way too much psychoanalysis of the number 19 for Jakob Poeltl, but I'm not a huge fan of number 19 for a center. We shall see. Of course, the first Raptor in history to wear number 19 as well, so we can't even compare him to former numbers 19 and sort of see if there's any sort of synergy there. It's a strange one. It's going to take me some time as well, Eric. I think maybe it'll grow on me, but I'm finding a hard time number 19 being the number that Jakob Poeltl's sporting out there because my brain's weird. Let's get to one final question here. And that one comes from Those Guys Sports, who is sort of asking about the difficulty in sorting out whether you want the team to get a top 10 draft pick or make the play-in. And his question is this team too good to miss out on the play-in? I think they are too good to miss out on the play-in. I think you got to prepare yourself. Those of you who really want to, scope out the lottery odds and be excited about having the 7th best odds or whatever, which is not my thing. I don't love it, but if you love it, that's fine. I'm not here to disagree. We all interact with the sport differently, and that's cool. But prepare yourself. This team's going to be in the play-in. Everyone's going to hate it. Everyone's going to be really upset about it until the games happen and the single elimination basketball magic takes you over and you live and die with every single possession in those games. And that's the stuff you remember as a fan. So it's all right. Top 10 pick will be nice. Sure. Maybe they still end up losing the play-in and end up in the lottery anyway and get some luck there from the deep part of the lottery, which to me would be like the lottery gods' way of thanking you for trying, I guess, is if you're really going for it, you're trying admirably to get the 14th pick in the draft, and you end up getting it as opposed to tanking down to get the 5th pick in the draft. I feel like that's like the type of behavior the lottery gods will favor. And so, whether you believe in the lottery gods or not, they're a thing. So maybe that's the sort of salve here. Maybe you can have your cake and eat it too, because it's an ethical 9th seed that the Raptors will go and get themselves as opposed to tanking down. Again, I know there's a lot of folks not thrilled about the idea of the play-in. That play-in for what has become this sort of rallying cry of the fan base because of Masai Ujiri saying it 2 years ago. I think there's got to be room for fun, good times in single elimination basketball, and the Raptors haven't partaken in a play-in game so far. I wouldn't mind seeing the experience of it. Maybe it's something I'll deeply hate and never want to see again, and it'll give me ulcers and all of that, but I'm kind of intrigued and excited by the idea of it, and I really do think, as much as the Raptors continue to disappoint and play down to competition and not take care of business when taking care of business seems almost like it's just there for them to do, and yet they still can't do it, I still think that ultimately the play-in is this team's destiny, whether it's the 7, 8, 9 seed. I think 10 seed even probably is going to be a little too low. They're just more talented than a lot of these teams, man, and they make a lot more sense, I think, now that Jakob Poeltl's in there than, say, the Hawks do as a team. I could see them putting together a bit of a string here and finishing with a less than stellar record, but still being in that play-in, and you got to prepare yourselves for it. If you prepare yourself for it, if you are expecting the play-in and they don't make it, then and you are someone who wants them to fall further in the lottery, then hey, that's great. If you are expecting them to make the play-in and they do make it, then that's fun too, and they've lived to your expectations. So expectations is kind of what this whole thing is about, isn't it? We're going to wrap it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow to break down Raptors Magic. We've got Mark Schindler from The Athletic coming on later this week as well to talk about Jakob Poeltl. He's a big fan of the Yak fit with the Raptors. We'll dig into why that is later this week. And then, of course, we'll send you off into the All-Star break on Friday as well. Show TBD then. Either way, thank you so much for tuning in. Please support the show by subscribing, following, rating, and reviewing for free on your favorite podcast apps and on YouTube. And now go make your second listen of the day, Locked On Leafs. The Buds are good. They're perhaps interested in Timo Meier, the belle of the ball, the NHL trade deadline. Go check out Locked On Leafs as they break that all down for you and get you set for a stretch run that should be very thrilling for your Toronto Maple Leafs. We will leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you Wednesday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye.